Welcome to the 6th segment, and in this section we will look at introducing PowerView. In this demonstration we will prepare the PowerPivot data model for PowerView reporting. Then we will create two PowerView reports. The first will include a slicer and tiled salespeople. The second will use the same slicer and display sales data on a map. So first of all, we need to switch on PowerPivot. So to do that we go to File, Options, and we look for add-ins, which we see down here. We look for COM add-ins and we see PowerPivot just there. So now let's go to PowerPivot. And we are interested in looking at the salesperson table. And what we're going to do is we are going to take one of the columns which contains binary data and indicate to PowerPivot that it's actually in an image. So to do that we're going to go to salesperson, and we see here that this column photo contains binary data. So what we want to do then is go to the advanced ribbon, and in the data category drop down list we want to say that this is an image. And then what we want to do is click the default field set. So what we want to do here is add salesperson and photo to the default fields list, and then we click on OK. The next thing we want to do is change the table behavior. What we're going to do here is in the row identifier drop down list we're going to select employee ID, and then we are going to, for the label, we're not wanting to show the employee ID, that's not very user friendly label. So in the default label box what we're going to do is select salesperson. Then for the default image we're obviously going to choose our photo. Then we're going to click on OK. We can see here that PowerPivot is updating. So then what we want to do next is select the sales table. What we want to do here is unhide this from Client Tools. We're working up towards the reports where we can see that information. We don't need some of these other columns, but what we'll do is we will leave them here. We don't need units as a total, so what we're going to do is simply delete that. And at this point we're going to permanently delete it from the model, so we're going to save some data here. So when we've done that we're going to save. So now we're back in Excel. We're back in the sales performance worksheet, and what we want to do is ensure that a blank cell is selected. And then what we want to do is insert a PowerView. So select our blank cell, click on PowerView, and now we should get a message. So it says we need to enable the PowerView add-in to use this feature. So let's enable that now. And when that's opened, what we see here is we have a PowerView sheet. So what I'd like to do is rename the tab from PowerView. We're going to call it Salesperson Sales. We're going to close the filters pane, simply because we're not going to use it right now. That gives us a little bit more space in the canvas. So what we want to do now is on the PowerView tab we're going to find our picture. Then what we want to do is we're going to get an image, and we're going to choose an image to display on the text. Now if we go back to our file location, we find the image here. So we can see we've now got a full image at that point should we want to use it. Now that's probably going to look quite busy. So what we want to do is we want to remove that. We don't want to set a background image, so we want to remove that one. So it's gone. So what we want to do instead is just simply insert a picture. This time we'll insert the same picture. It appears at the top. So what we can do here is actually put it to the right hand side. And off it goes. We can also minimize it to make more space for everything else. So now what we want to do is start to create a slicer. So now we go back to PowerView and we look for the fields. Then what we want to do is find date, and we're looking for fiscal, which we can see here, and then we want to select year. This simply creates a single column table. We can convert this single column table so that it becomes a slicer. So the way that we do that is we go to the Design tab and then we simply click Slicer. So on the slicer we could select a year, for example. In this example we'll select FY 2010. So now we're going to create some more data on here. So what we want to do then is we click in the blank area of the canvas, and then we want to get our salesperson data. So we're going to go to Fields again, we're going to click on Salesperson. So what we want to do now is drag both of these onto the table. So we've got Photo and Fields. So we can resize it so that it takes up a more decent size of space on the canvas. So what we can do now is we can set these so that they are tiles. So on the design ribbon, to do that we can set tiles simply by clicking this button here. So what we can see here is that we've actually got a table with one person in it and then lots of filters at the top here. So we're just going to select this and we're going to delete it. Now we've deleted the table, so it looks slightly better now. Let's move that down. So then what we want to do is click back inside the blank area of the child region. Let's make sure we are selected on all so we can see all of the fields. In the date table we are going to select month again, and it just sits in there. That's the one. So now we can see that they are chronologically ordered, not ordered in terms of the alphabet. So now we go to the sales data. This will start to give us some metrics. Then we have 3 select fields. So we want to select distinct products, quantity and sales. What we can see here is a small calculator against some of these, and what that basically means is that's an explicit data model calculation which we defined in segment 3 of this series. The sigma symbol represents an automatic calculated field, and this came about because the quantity column was unhidden in this demo earlier. So now we've got visible numeric columns. This allows for flexible aggregation in the PowerView report. So what we can do now is in the layout area, beneath the PowerView fields in the quantity list, what we can do, instead of selecting sum, we could select maximum, for example. And what we see here is that we have got the change in the table. Instead of sum of quantity, we've got the maximum quantity as well. So explicit calculations don't allow an option to change the aggregate function. So what we could do if we wanted would be to put it back again. So we will continue the design of this particular table by adding in the quota information as well, and that would give us some context. So here we have the quota field, and this value actually comes from Power Query, which we imported earlier in this series. Finally, what we can do is go and find our salesperson KPI and select the status field. Once we do that, it gives us an extremely quick visual cue of what we can do in PowerView. Simply just to show straight away, we can see where the problems are live and where everything seems to be fine. We have green, yellow and red here. If you wanted, we could go back to the Power Pivot model and change those. We could have stars, for example. So what we could do, for example, is we could see how one of the other salespeople has been doing. Garrett here, for example. And we could go back to Garrett again and change it. See what data we have here. So we can start to get an idea of people's performance, and all we need to do is click and tick and drag and drop. We don't have to do any programming. In order to obtain this information, we get it really quickly. So what we'll do now is we'll insert another PowerView report. So to do that, go to Insert, then PowerView. In this one, we're going to start entering a map. So we're going to call this one Sales by Country. So what we want to do is give ourselves a bit of head start. So to do that, we are going to copy the logo that's here and put it in Sales by Country. This time, for some variety, we could put it on the left hand side. That looks a bit better. And what we'll do is we'll add in a title as well, Sales by Country. That looks better. We can also copy in the slicer as well. So if we go to Salesperson Sales, we can copy this slicer, go to Sales by Country and paste. We can move it back into position again. What we can do now is click in the blank area of the report canvas, and in PowerView Fields we will go to our reseller information. We have our geography hierarchy that we created earlier in this series, and we want to have this information by state. So basically we want to show sales by state. So let's go back down to the sales table and collect sales. We can see the information. So what we could do is we could resize the table, and then we could turn this into a map. So to do that, on the Design tab, we want to select this to be a map, and we can see this option here. At this point we will go off to Bing Maps and bring the information back. If we required, we can enable the content, but we haven't needed to do that here. PowerView uses the Bing Maps service across the internet to perform some geocoding, which is basically lookup of spatial coordinates in order to retrieve that information and map images. So what we can do now in PowerView fields, and we can go back to our reseller table, and we can select the country field, and then what we could do is add that as vertical multiples. What that gives us is more detailed information for each country. So we have France, Canada, United Kingdom and the United States. We can make it more interesting as well. So for example, we go to the products hierarchy. What we could do is then add the category field to colour. And that starts to show us how well each of the colours have been performing. But we might decide, well actually, we don't really want that information. It's maybe too hard to see. So what we could do there is take products and drag category down to colour instead. And that cuts it down. We have accessories, bikes, clothing and components. And we can see that we have got pie charts here, and that reveals statistics about the product category and their sales. So we could change the slicer if we wanted to show something else, to show just accessories on its own, for example, or even bikes on their own. What we could do as well is add different themes, because we can see that this shows a lot of red and green together. So perhaps we could choose something like that. Now that might be hard to see because the blue blends in with the grey, so let's try and choose something that stands out a bit better. Let's see what that one looks like. Back to red and green. Well, I'll leave that as an exercise for you to find some colour scheme which you feel more comfortable with. So now we're going to save this information here, but before we go, let's point out the workbook size. You can see we've collected a lot of data, and we've also displayed it really nicely in a very small file. And with that just leaves a quick summary of how we prepares the Power Pivot data model for PowerView.